I feel a little guilty by taking up a little time, basically sponsorship. So I'm honored to do what I'm about to do, but I feel like that I owe the organization something. So by having the opportunity to introduce a special person, I'm also going to be a sponsor. With Jason go. Okay, so I'm going to be one of your sponsors today, and I'll pay you afterwards. Okay. Or the check's in the mail, okay? You're right. Well, listen, I've known this person for several years. Matter of fact, I'll tell you in just a second. His name is Mr. Josh McCoon. Good friend, good senator, good state senator. I met him a couple years before he ran for the Senate. He's been recognized as one of the outstanding young Republicans. Awesome guy, excellent attorney, has a great practice down in Columbus, Georgia. Married to a beautiful wife, Jacqueline, and she couldn't be here this morning. But I've got mixed emotions about this, and I'll tell you why. There's no doubt in my mind that he's going to be a good, outstanding Secretary of State. But he is an excellent state senator. I hate to see him leave. I had the opportunity several times to go down to the Senate and speak on some bills dealing with immigration, illegal immigration of folks getting driver's license, and I don't know, Jason. I hope you've groomed someone. Josh. I hope you've groomed some folks there to take your lead, because we need to continue that fight. We got a lot of issues there. So, without taking up any more of your time, it's my honor and pleasure to introduce my good friend, State Senator Josh McCoon.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Sheriff Warren. I appreciate that introduction. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today. I'm cognizant that there are a lot of great things happening here in Cobb County and with the Cobb County Republican Party. And I know you've got some other folks to hear from. So I'm going to try to just briefly tell you a little bit about myself, a little bit about why I'm running to be your next Secretary of State, what we hope to accomplish, and why I think I'm your best choice in the May 22nd primary. Before I do that, I do want to say one thank you, and that is one of the best things about being involved in Republican Party politics before I was in the state Senate, the people that you meet. And one of the really great friends I made during that time, and we've stayed friends since then, is my friend Sue Everhart. And Sue has been so gracious to chair my campaign, to get up early on a Saturday morning to be here with us today. I'm so grateful for your leadership in the Republican Party and your help with this effort. Thank you so much, Sue. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. My family moved to Columbus, Georgia when my great-grandfather had an opportunity to go to work at the Eagle and Phoenix Textile Mill in downtown Columbus. Today, it's a big condo complex, but back when he was there, he worked a lot of different machines there in the mill. He worked there for 50 years. My grandfather dropped out of school in the 8th grade during the Great Depression to help take care of our family, worked a lot of different jobs until World War II broke out. And he enlisted in the Army. He fought in the Pacific. When the war ended, he came home. He married my grandmother, who worked at commercial printers in Columbus. He did a lot of jobs when he got back. He was a milkman. He was a railroad conductor. Eventually, he and my grandmother saved up enough money to open a grocery store at 5th Avenue and 8th Street in downtown Columbus. They had a lot of different small businesses over the years. One of my first childhood memories is helping my granddad reload the Coca-Cola machine at the laundromat they owned, which was the last of those small businesses. But they were entrepreneurial people. They worked very, very, very hard. My dad was the first member of our family to go to college. He went to Auburn University, and and he worked in that same Eagle and Phoenix textile mill in the summertime to pay tuition. He went on to law school, and he's been practicing law for over 40 years now. And I followed in his footsteps and had the opportunity to run for and be elected to the Georgia State Senate in 2010. It's been a great privilege to serve in the State Senate, and I appreciate Sheriff Warren's comments. But I tell you all of that to say to you, my family's been able to live our American dream. We've been able to do the kind of things that people come to this country to be able to do. And I feel like it's getting harder and harder for people to achieve their own American dream. And I think a government that has gotten too big and has gotten in the way is really a big obstacle to that. So that's why I'm running for Secretary of State. If you remember, one thing that I say to you is this: I'm running to be your Secretary of State so Georgia can be the fastest state in the nation to get a job and the toughest state in the nation to cast an illegal vote. That is why I'm running for Secretary of State. And just to tell you a little bit about what I hope to accomplish in the office, it's really three things. The job one, in my opinion, is licensing. When we talk about being the fastest state in the nation to get a job, we need to ask ourselves, every time the government issues a permission slip for somebody to go to work. 40 years ago, about 1 in 20 Americans had to get a license to go to work. Now it's closer to 1 in 4. And in Georgia, a cosmetology license holder spends 350 days in training on average before they get their first paycheck, where the EMT who comes to render life-saving aid spends 31 days in training on average. So there's some layers of government that are getting in the way of people going after the dignity of honest hard work. So job one as your Secretary of State is to get government out of the way and put more people to work. When it comes to elections, I could spend an awful lot of time, but I won't, about the issues with elections. You've heard a little bit about voting technology. It's going to be very important that we have an open and transparent process that involves local boards of elections in what sort of solution we have. But it needs to be a verifiable voter audit trail that we have, and a paper-based audit trail. We need to do something about the legal challenges that get filed every election. You've heard from a great number of our state legislators here today. We have a great Republican majority in the State House and the State Senate. The far left is not going to alter Georgia election law under the Gold Dome. But that doesn't mean they've given up on that goal. They've just decided instead they're going to go seek that relief in federal court and try to get an Obama-appointed federal judge to rewrite Georgia election law. We had an issue this past summer. I guess most of the people in this room probably saw a few of the television commercials in the John Ossoff, Karen Handel runoff election. Over $30 million spent by the other side. But there were a number of legal challenges, one of which was to extend voter registration. And Georgia has a very important law about voter registration, and that is you have to be registered 30 days before the election. Why is that important? So that we have a roll of voters that we know they are who they say they are and that they're qualified to vote. That's why we don't have same-day registration. Well, the left came in and said, oh no, it's not 30 days from the April election, it needs to be 30 days from the runoff. Well, that's all part of one election, folks. The people that are running for Senator Hill's seat, after Tuesday, there'll be a runoff. But you don't get to have a second election because there'll only be 2 that'll move on to the runoff. It's part of a process. But they got the judge they wanted, they got the result they wanted, and what was our reaction? The state of Georgia surrendered. Now, if the left wants to rewrite Georgia election law, the Secretary of State needs to defend the position taken by the General Assembly. If that means going to the 11th Circuit, if it means going to the U.S. Supreme Court, those are the people that are going to have to tell me that we are changing Georgia election law, not a single unelected federal judge. One other quick point about elections. We have some work to do with the General Assembly on tightening up our laws. We talk about voter ID all the time. Yes, you have to show voter ID if you show up to early vote. Yes, you have to show voter ID if you show up on election day. But you can request an absentee ballot, receive an absentee ballot, and vote an absentee ballot, and there's no verification whatsoever. I think at a minimum, we ought to require notarization so that that notary is looking at a driver's license. At least somebody in the process is verifying that person is who they say they are. We had an issue in Columbus a couple of years ago. A lady came to the elections office with 19 absentee ballots. They were filled out. They were not in their envelopes. She was planning on turning them in. Thankfully, a Republican member of our Board of Elections, U.D. Roberts, was there, and he said, "Hey, what's going on?" And they investigated. They found out all 19 of these individuals lived at a Columbus area nursing home. And 15 of the 19 couldn't sign their name or make their mark. They were in really bad shape. And spoiler alert here, they did not vote for Republicans. Those ballots were not being cast for Republican candidates. We've got to tighten that process up. Similarly, on voter registration, we have a situation in our state where people can pay bounties to get people to register to vote. They can pay by the registration. And so we had a situation in Columbus. A young man was there for a travel ball tournament, wanted to be able to just participate in the tournament, and he got approached by an organizer with the New Georgia Project, which is something run by one of the leading Democratic candidates for governor. And they said, "Hey, we want to register you to vote." He said, "Well, I don't live in Georgia." "That's no problem. Just fill out the form. Fill out the form, because that's the way they're going to get paid." And so he did. They sent the registration into the Muskogee County Registrar's office, where it was promptly denied. And then when that young man tried to vote last November, he wasn't able to do it. So we've got to work with the General Assembly to outlaw this practice, this invitation to voter registration fraud that is paying people by the registration. We've got to do something about that. Lastly, I would say to you, we need a chief transparency officer in our state. We need someone who's going to be committed to the idea of open and transparent government. I've been that advocate in the Senate. Next year, we're going to, for the first time ever, broadcast our committee meetings online, something the House has done, I think, for 15 years. That's something I was very involved in, but there's more work for us to do. I want us to pass a legislative proposal called the Georgia Checkbook that would allow us to post online for your review every expenditure of Georgia taxpayer dollars. You ought to be able to see that. Other states have done it. We pass the budget in the General Assembly, but then we don't really know ultimately where does that money go. And we can solve that problem very simply and easily by leveraging technology in a way that I think makes an awful lot of sense. To close, I just want to talk about why I think I'm your best choice in the May 22nd primary. There are 4 Republicans running in this race, and they're all good and decent people. But the question you've got to ask yourself is, on November of 2020, when Donald Trump is on the ballot for re-election, if the left was willing to spend $30 million and file multiple lawsuits in one congressional election, what will they do to try to flip the 16 electoral votes in Georgia in 2020? You don't want someone in this seat who needs on-the-job training to understand election law to be able to handle the challenges and the pressure that's going to come. You also want someone that's tested. You want somebody that's going to be able to take whatever the left and the media throws at them. And I know not everybody in this room knows me, but if you go back and look at the last 7 years I've spent in the legislature, I've been in that fight. I know what that feels like, okay? I'm not going to run away from a difficult conversation or from a perceived controversial position to stand up for the rule of law and what everyone in this room believes in. So that's one reason I think I'm your best choice. The other thing that you need to know about is the most prominent Democrat running for statewide office right now is not running for governor or lieutenant governor. They're running for Secretary of State, former Congressman John Barrow. John Barrow has been able to win marginal elections. He's been able to portray himself as a conservative Democrat. You need somebody who's going to be standing on that debate stage, not for the first time dealing with these issues and dealing with a very skilled advocate on the other side. You need someone who's going to be able to communicate our message and, most importantly, prosecute the case against John Barrow. And I would humbly submit to you, I have been preparing for that opportunity for some time. And I believe that if you will join our campaign, we can keep the Secretary of State's seat in the hands of people who are going to be committed to fair elections, not putting their thumb on the scale to try to get a particular result. So I'd ask for your vote on May 22nd. There are sign-up sheets all around the room. We need you to join our campaign. Cobb County is going to be incredibly important to us in this campaign. I'm going to be hanging around as long as people are here if you want to ask me any other questions. Thank you, Jason, so much for this opportunity to share with you all today. Thank you.